Hi, I'm Scott Fagen, the mainframe evangelist with CDW. Welcome to Navigating the Turbid Waters of AI with CDW and IBM Z systems. I'm joined by Joe Markwith, Roger Campbell, and Greg Peters. Guys, can you quickly introduce yourselves? Joe.
Yeah, Joe Markwith, based out of Denver, Colorado. I am the Chief Moat Strategist for CDW.
Roger.
Roger Campbell, Principal Consultant, working with Joe on the Moat strategy.
And Greg.
Greg Peters, based out of Columbia, South Carolina, and I cover all things application modernization and AI and mainframe.
Very cool. All right, well, let's just jump right into it. So, hey, Joe, we'll start with you.
Okay.
What is the impact of AI on today's businesses and jobs?
Yeah, well, that first slide, let's go to that first slide there, mastering operational AI transformation. The impact that's happening right now is that we have disruption that was brought on about February of last year with the democratization of AI and ChatGPT. And it was a pivotal time where we just saw a tectonic shift in AI, and it transformed everything from, it is transforming everything from society to culture to business as usual. And it's a massively disruptive technology that's happening in the world right now. And the old patterns that we've used to solve problems, to go to market, to deal with business change and transformation are turned upside down on their head, and it's time for necessary actually for new models and new patterns to be adopted.
Okay, interesting. Joe, Roger, can you talk a little bit more about Moat here at CDW?
So with Moat, we've tried to do a evaluation from a holistic standpoint to make sure that we've got a good approach to deal with those changes. And if you go to the next slide, we can talk about the change that has happened and the velocity of change. Now, most organizations are a change adverse just by nature. And so what we try to do is we use this program to help provide accelerants for organizations to adapt changing technology. Now, we've been doing this for years. We've been doing it with agile development practices, with automation, with cloud enablement, with DevOps. We're just applying it to all of that change on steroids, which is what we're seeing with AI velocity. The new capabilities, the amount of things that can be accomplished with these AI models is rapidly evolving. And so now is probably more important than any time for companies to be able to adapt and adjust to that rapid change.
Okay, so Joe, according to Gartner, AI is sort of in that peak of the hype cycle. You want to make a comment about that, or talk about that a little bit from what you're seeing in the field?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Scott. So I've seen that the hype cycle of that Gartner puts out along any kind of new technology, and people gravitate to that for comfort, for perspective, and for awareness. And I think Gartner does generally a pretty good job in their analysis. I think the Moat perspective is we differ on this particular topic, that there are certain tectonic shifts in technology like electricity, the automobile, the internet, mobile communications, smartphones, that don't fall along those hype cycles that Gartner defaults to. I believe they default to. There are some certain technologies like those I just mentioned, and AI is falling into those right now, this category where it's a linear progression up. And not only a linear, if you look at this graph right here, it's an exponential curve. We're seeing a compounding of the AI, not a slowing down, not a peak of a hype cycle, because the technology is evolving at such a rapid rate. So this is a very linear progression upward, not a hype cycle.
Okay, great. So can you talk a little bit, I guess I'll go back to Roger again. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of AI that are sort of being used, explored, and actually in some cases deployed today?
Absolutely. So if you go to the next slide, you'll start to see some studies that have been done on the adoption in different areas of the industry. And some of the industry is going to be majorly impacted by AI. Content creation is your job, technical writing, administrative type tasks, things like that. There's going to be a big impact based on the use cases and the uses we're seeing in the industry today. But as these AI capabilities evolve and that rate of adoption increases, I think we'll start to see more and more of the various aspects of the industry being impacted than even is estimated today. And even today, on an average, we're talking about 25% being the rough estimate across the board of impacted jobs, in at least being impeded by AI. And a lot of people say that if you at least don't understand AI, you might be replaced by somebody who does understand AI to help leverage these capabilities. So these tools are productivity multipliers. They are able to condense and create content very quickly. And so by using those and being able to edit what the AI creates, because it may not be perfect, but using that in a various way of capabilities. And if you go to the next slide, we feel like this business.
But no, yep, there you go.
Yeah, this business impact is going to hit all across your organization. So what we're seeing is people using the very obvious AIs for chatbots, for solving the problems of customer interfaces with answering questions about their products or whatever through an AI rather than a call service agent. But we're also seeing across the board a business impact for marketing, for sales, for finance, for HR. Are we even hiring the right skill sets we need to be hiring for? And then there's regulatory aspects that I think we'll talk a little bit more later on, but early this year, there was an ISO standard released, and late last year, there was an executive order released around AI usage and AI responsibility. So it's going to have a broad impact on organizations. And the next slide talks about the various aspects that we see. There's tons of business cases out there, but if you look at all of them, they kind of fall into one of 7 patterns, whether it be, hyper-personalization of somebody that you interact with across a customer service line, recognition of patterns, recognition of objects, things like quality control of circuit boards, things like that, that take a lot of human eyes to strain and compare a good result versus a bad result. The AI is very good at discerning that once it's trained. So these kind of patterns usually lend itself to a lot of different actual use cases, and there are hundreds of use cases being identified, and the catalog grows every day as we work with these organizations.
So if you go to slide 6, to add on to what? Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was actually gonna try to bring you kind of into the mainframe part of this, right? It seems that the audience for this webcast is going to be primarily mainframe folks, and they're working in the banking industry, the finance industry, healthcare, large logistics, and retail. Where do you see? I think I'm looking more at the left side of this graph, right, to talk about those kinds of industries. How do you see that impacting folks with mainframes, large installations of mainframes, and as we move forward? Because they're running on systems that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of transactions a day. I can see that there's a lot of space here to improve that processing. Where do you see that happening, Joe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think from a structural standpoint, those specialized use cases that are highly secure, highly proprietary intellectual property. You might call it the secret sauce of the organization, of the business. This is why we're having a business impact conversation with the clients, and the mainframe has a seat at that table because of protecting that IP, that security, that customer service, that customer interaction, and that speed, that velocity of service. So what we're seeing, and also our philosophy that we started this off with, is that you own the AI or the AI is going to own you. And it's critical for those selected high value use cases that they be hosted in a more secure environment. To that end, locally, with locally trained AI models that can be insulated from the cloud and risks that you might get on that side. And also with localized AI models, large language models that aren't exposed to the volatility that you might have from the more commercially available systems that are all-purpose AIs. Very targeted use cases that are hosted locally on mainframe. So mainframe definitely has a critical seat at the table in the strategic conversation.
Yeah, I could see a lot going on there, certainly around things like credit card transaction, fraud detection, medical fraud detection, somebody putting in invalid, asking for invalid tests, putting in for invalid claims, certainly on the retail side, looking at, patterns and things of purchasing or making sure that logistically the right stock is sent to the right stores, right? That's the kind of things that we'd be looking at, much more of the in-transaction kind of activity versus less the conversation, human interaction. Although I guess the yellow predictive analytics and decisions would be there as well. Hey, Greg, let me drag you in here for a couple minutes. I know that you've been out working on helping customers modernize their application sets to be able to, include AI in what they're doing. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there, whether it's on the distributed cloud or mainframe applications front?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges a lot of our mainframe clients have is getting access to the data to make better decisions about modernization. And I think one of the key areas is how can we make and rationalize applications on a mainframe to make better choices and at the same time use artificial intelligence to help understand those problem domains better. The biggest challenge really is getting that data to make those decisions, to perform better things like cost reduction and performance optimization, right? If you look at the very same problem on the distributed side, what you're going to find is that they're solving the same problems in a different way. And so I think artificial intelligence and the things that Joe and Roger are talking about here specifically apply to every one of those domains, but we have to utilize what's currently in place today, align AI as a tooling mechanism or a process to be able to enforce those modernization objectives. So I think it's going to be, again, probably another year of AI increase and acceleration, to Joe's point, a massive acceleration to be able to meet the demands of business even faster.
Yep. Yeah, there's always been a cottage industry out there of small and large firms who are looking to help customers move from something like COBOL or PL1 to Java or another newer language. And I mean, IBM has just announced their Watson X Code Assistant product, which is basically AI looking at your COBOL and being able to turn that COBOL into Java. Do you see that as something? I mean, I know that that's also happening on the distributed side. I'm just not as familiar with it. Do you see a lot of AI going in and basically helping a customer look at the code, be able to figure out, what the right direction is to take, whether it's scrap it, rewrite it, re-platform it? Is that something that you're seeing as well out there, Greg?
I think we're seeing it more on the distributed side, but definitely on the mainframe side, specifically with Watson X, right? So if we look at AI and rewriting code or refactoring code, I don't think anybody is under the mindset today that AI is going to completely replace somebody doing complete modernization today, right? It's going to be a tool by which they can use AI to better get you maybe 30, 40, 50% of the way there in rewriting it. But on the mainframe side, it's a much different world. Now, if you look at, and Joe and I and Roger have looked at this too on the other side, on the distributed side, with DeepSeek Coder, some Hugging Face models to do some of that kind of analysis on there. I think it's maybe a little bit ahead of the game on that side, but for the most part, it's going to accelerate more into the mainframe, more into the understanding of using models to help rewrite some of that code, and then at the same time provide the rationalization. So I think it's a two-step problem here really quickly. The first thing is understanding what you got to make those decisions. And the second step is using AI to reinforce those decisions based on that data to accelerate the modernization process. So, and that does apply to both C, assembler, PL1, COBOL, right? Like we've seen in this past, Scott. So I think those are all fair game. Obviously, it's going to start with COBOL first. but we'll see other ones fall into place later.
Yeah, I was reading an article in, I think it was in Forbes, and it was about application modernization. I was looking for the word mainframe in there because that's one of my concerns. And it turned out that it was just this company had, an old application that they had written in the 90s, and they had, like everybody else, right? The code drifts from the original implementation, and now they're trying to figure out how do they document it so that these developers who are coming in and working for them today can work on it efficiently. And it's, and they're turning to AI to help solve that problem. So it's not one of those things where, your COBOL code's 50 years old, but your C and C++ code is 30 years old. I'm not so sure that it matters all that much, those extra 20 years, right? Might be a little bit more drift in that COBOL, but I think that the problem exists all across IT, where we're not the greatest at being able to document what we've done, and sometimes it takes, an AI forensic analysis to figure it out and be able to move forward.
One thing to add to Greg's modernization thing. I was just going to say one thing to add to his modernization approach, and we've talked quite a bit about this, that English is the hottest programming language right now. And to Roger's comment about the productivity multipliers that we're seeing with today's modern AI, we can go back and review some of those legacy applications and decide, are they better served through an advanced prompt, through the right model and the right data, naturally the data that we're using, and RAG data, in other words, retrieval augmentation of text documents, PowerPoints, spreadsheets, fused in with that AI model to solve the business problem that was originally designed 20, 30 years ago. Is it better served by AI? So we're seeing a lot of velocity and opportunity there to transfer that load to and democratize those applications into more AI prompting type paradigms as well.
Okay. So, I mean, that kind of begs the question, where should somebody get started, right? Where would a business or an IT shop get started, get their toe in the water on AI? Yeah, I'll stick with you, Joe, on that.
Yeah, well, I think first, if we go to slides, 6 and 7, let's go to slide 6, and slide 6. Yeah, if you see here, we talked about those 6 patterns. Roger covered that really well, the 6 AI patterns, and that's really where we were focused in on, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. But now with the current day AI, we're really looking at these multimodal AI systems that do voice, video, robotics, IoT. They listen for events and activities, autonomous vehicles, video, and the orchestration between all of these create new opportunities to solve business problems and business use cases. So it's understanding the landscape first. What does a multimodal AI look like, and multi-agent? If you go to slide 7, what we have with the AI today is artificial intelligence, but also artificial empathy, artificial intuition, artificial reasoning, and artificial teams. So you can build up synthetic teams of AI agents to run tasks and collaborate with each other within these AI teams. Coming out of this, we have synthetic data being generated, synthetic text, synthetic voice, images, and video coming out of these, and synthetic avatars and whole identities that are being spun up. And this is happening at a very rapid rate. So it's just understanding of that landscape, and then seeing in slide 8 where you're at in the maturity curve. If you click on that, and every client's different, and even within the client, what we're seeing in our customer surveys is that one department, typically IT and security, will be further along the maturity curve than holistically the rest of the business. So you'll have maybe marketing and HR and legal lagging behind, where IT and security are definitely further ahead of the game. But to ensure that from a business operational standpoint, you want to get everyone at the same level of understanding of the opportunity to implement the AI. And then from there, it's slide 9, you go into use case identification and deciding how you're going to do it. And going back to Roger's initial thing, that we've been doing this for a very long time in application development, agile development, and DevOps. Picking the quick wins, getting that AI culture with quick wins that are just easy to implement, ROI, and shavings make a pile. So we get a lot of these quick wins together. There's a good ROI that comes out of that, and you're operationalizing it. And then in parallel, working on differentiating use cases and transformational initiatives all at the same time as you move your company forward. But again, the mainframe is critical to each one of these phases and each one of these stages of transformation.
So,
Okay.
so Joe, can I jump in here, guys, really quick? I just want to mention something that Joe, that you mentioned. I think is really important. So traditionally, historically, for the past 10 or 15 years, we've tried to convince clients that you want to take a medium-based differentiating approach first, because it has enough value to the business to be able to align with business cases, right? But I've also seen clients do the quick win side of it, to your point. I think AI is going to make it such a way that exactly what you're saying, which is it's going to force clients that really thought that the medium level use cases that differentiate a little bit are actually getting moved and shifted to the left a little bit towards those quick wins to be even faster, because you can use those as an accelerant. So I think that's spot on. I think we're going to see more of that this year. But go ahead, Scott. I didn't want to cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, I was going to throw it over to Roger because I'm sure he's busting to say something too.
Yeah, we'll get to this a little further, but the quick wins are an important aspect of getting the culture acclimated to the success that can be done. So having those quick wins visible and celebrating those success of those quick wins really gets the stakeholders that may be a little more laggards or a little more distracted by other initiatives they're working on, really brings them some attention and gets them on board. And the sooner you get the entire boat rowing in the same direction, the better, and the better chance those more transformational initiatives will have of sticking and lasting a longer term.
Yep. Yeah, I'd also say that on the mainframe side, and again, I won't speak for the distributed side, but on the mainframe side, all of the major software vendors have been adding AI to their favorite tools, whether they're the security monitoring tools or the system monitoring tools, right? They've been following along with the this would be hype, Joe, right? The AI ops and the SecOps and DevSecOps, right? All of the tools that are coming out are, they have AI. I hate to use the word infused, or embedded in them to help make better decisions around detection, anomaly detection, and in some cases being able to take actions based on what your folks have done before, right? They can watch and see what the reactions are and remember what they are, and then take that action automatically. So some of these little wins or quick wins don't have to be you and your team at the IT shop building something that uses AI. You can use something that has been implemented by another company or by one of your software vendors by just simply updating to the latest product. I mean, I think that's very important, that you don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get into this space until you find a specific use case that might be your application specific, right? I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're kind of coming to the end here, but a lot of people are very concerned about the ethics of AI and the security around AI. So Joe, can you talk a little bit about, how does one make sure that the AI doesn't own you?
That's a really good question. And it's a complicated one that, again, every company's different. Our view is AI regarding AI sovereignty, that, you have sovereignty over your data, your compliance, your level of compliance, your values as a company, what reflects your values, not somebody else's definition of safety and responsible AI being imposed upon you, but that you as an enterprise, you as a company have your own definition that is your North Star that governs it. And the reason why I bring that up is that what they've found with the AI models is that the safer they make them, the worse they perform, the dumber they become. And this goes back to those highly sensitive privatized use cases where you might want a more relaxed AI model, even an uncensored model, not because you're trying to do anything nefarious with that model, but because the performance that you're going to get out of that specialized uncensored model is greater than what you're going to get out of the more public domain, what you might call responsible or safe AI. Because it's one of those questions: who gets to define what's safe? Who gets to define what's responsible? And our belief is that it's up to your company and your culture and your business to define what that is, and then contain that within your environment. And then you set up your own internal policies and guardrails around access to that, to those services and that data and those outputs. And there's tools out there, open source tools that can be leveraged, like NVIDIA has guardrails that can be used to help manage the responsibility at the level that you want to manage it. That's it at a high level.
Okay. Roger, you have any thoughts around ethics?
Yeah, I would add to that a little bit. For one thing, you're going to want to have some policies around what your AI usage should be and what people can do with the AI, because more than likely you're going to have some shadow AI. And if you go to jump to slide 11 there, we found it consistently when we talk to organizations, the leaders may not think they have anybody using AI, but once we do interviews or surveys, we find out that there's at least some AI being done in the margins, whether somebody's an early adopter or somebody's gone off and investigated how they want to do things of their own personal job. Some of them are loading documents into ChatGPT. Some of them are doing other things that may be fine, but they may need to be addressed through policies to make awareness and make sure they're transparent. Because one of the things that the regulatory space is going to, and the landscape is changing pretty rapidly in the regulatory arena, but it seems to be gravitating towards transparency. So making sure that if you use AI, you're telling your client that you're using AI, and obviously data privacy. So making sure that your personal information is not being put out in a public domain, and making sure that people who have their data used by AI are giving their consent to do that. So in order to avoid some of those pitfalls, you definitely want to have a review and have a policy on what you're telling your employees, just out of due diligence. That way you can avoid any kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding between your management and your employees about what they are and are not supposed to be doing. Cool. And so I think from the ethics standpoint, there's evidence that some models can show bias. And so making sure that you have test scenarios that would vet those out and make sure that those are not showing any bias, unintended bias that you're getting from the results. So making sure that you're validating your model is another big part of the regulatory aspect as well.
Right. There was recently a case of a chain store using AI to do facial recognition to potentially, to pick out who might the shoplifters be. And that turned into a giant brouhaha because it was choosing people of particular races more often than others without what was apparently just cause, I think. So you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you're not. I mean, we all know that software testing is hard. I get the feeling that AI testing is even harder, because of the unintended effects that you may not know about when you release the AI into the wild. So,
right.
Kind of an interesting point.
Yeah, if you find yourself in that situation, you want to at least be able to communicate and show the steps you took to combat against that bias. So you'll be in a lot better position if you have that roadmap of what you've done, rather than saying, well, we just trusted the AI. That's not going to fly very well.
Yeah, that's not defensible.
That's really not. It's really not. I mean, the IBM seems to be going down the path of making sure that the AI itself is giving, if you ask, right, how did it arrive at this conclusion into their AI software and their AI offerings as a means to sort of defend against that, right? So you could either determine if the AI is bad or if the model is bad, or if the junk data that you gave it was bad, right? I mean, there's a lot to this that's really. I mean, you had that. The slide with there's so much more below the surface than just the tip of the iceberg that really goes into building this. And Joe, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, we really haven't talked about the dark side of AI, which is the deep fake capabilities. Mm-hmm. And some of the things like with some of these tools, you can get someone's likeness of their video and their voice, saying things like your CEO saying that the company is going bankrupt or whatever, and putting it on social media. So much like you need a playbook around a ransomware, you probably need to be thinking about what's your playbook going to be with a deep fake attack.
Yep.
Well, and I would add to that, Roger, in terms of risks and threats. We brought this up last week in a client meeting. There's a open source model, Scott, called White Rabbit Neo on Hugging Face, and it's a air quotes. It's a white hat hacker AI model for IT to try and test out and ideate around hacking attempts against their networks. Of course, I say white hat, but it can also be used for nefarious purposes. Right. So what's happening is the speed of these AI models coming out, open source, free for anyone to use, and even run locally on your local PC if you want to. In other words, you don't need any big hosting environment, are presenting different challenges for IT that maybe they hadn't thought about. So that those same models could be used against a bad actor within your enterprise, and you need to be having people within your organization abreast of and up to speed on what's coming out at the latest moment, and because the audience out there, the external audience, is aware of what's going on out there, so you need to be monitoring that as well.
Okay,
those kinds of things. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Joe, you said something just previously around performance, and I just wanted to put the plug in around the mainframe because IBM has put developed the Telum chip that's in the newer mainframe models. Actually, it's all the currently released mainframe models that actually allows for AI inferencing to be done locally to the application. And we've had a number of customers report that where they had all of the AI running, the fraud detection or the anomaly detection running off platform, they weren't allowed to run all of the, well, not that they weren't allowed to, they couldn't afford to run all of the transactions through that detection because of the latency that occurred, going from the mainframe to the distributed infrastructure and back. And once they were able to kind of take that model, compile it, run it on ZOS or run it in Z Linux right next to ZOS, that latency went away, and they were able to go from 10, 20% of the transactions, maybe the higher value ones, to 100% of the transactions, and really improve their detection and efforts in that space. So that's why one of the reasons why I think it's very, very important as a mainframe person to get involved in these in these activities by your company, because where they may deploy something that purports to work, network speeds are limited. The speed of light, it hasn't been fixed yet by any company that I know of. And so getting things as close together as you can, where there's zero latency, becomes very, very important in a high transaction, where you're running thousands or tens of thousands of transactions every second.
Hey, Scott, to visibility to that, do you mind if we go to, because you said something really important, all that infrastructure configuration setup. If we go to slide 14 and talk about the reference architecture, so that way there's visibility monitoring of that progress holistically through the organization. And this is Roger's thought leadership. I'll turn it over to him to talk about it. But I think it's important for this audience to see holistically, again, where they fit within the organization and visibility of the work that they're doing. That doesn't always get the credit it deserves. And I think this helps elevate its importance.
Yeah, so for the reference architecture, we basically wanted to look at, independently of the use case, how ready is the organization for AI-enabled capabilities. So we came up with 5 pillars to evaluate for people, strategy, data, admin, and that would be the things we talked about as far as the regulatory compliance, the ability to recover from any type of deepfake attack. And then finally, whatever technical solution space you're choosing for tools and platforms for your AI. All that is covered by a horizontal aspect of security, because security touches all of the pillars. And so for each of these pillars that we've identified, on the next slide, we take an example of data, and we probe into data, the data pillar, and we list key practices that are part of that data pillar. And each one of those key practices has about 7 things to evaluate in an organization to see if it's not in place, somewhat in place, or largely in place. And you don't have to have everything largely in place to get started, but it may give you an indication of where you want to go, especially as you start thinking about where the puck is going with AI instead of just where it is today. And you want to really prepare for tomorrow as well as what you can do with it right now. So if you go to the next slide, we talk about a current state that you can gather across all these different pillars to evaluate where you are in your key practices, and then put together an action plan to move those red squares to a green color and get as much green as you can so that you can be as robust as possible in your AI journey.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So this is something that your team would be able to help a customer with, should they ask?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Very good. Very good. So where, I guess to close this out, right? I mean, everybody can kind of give their plug on where can you learn a little bit more about AI, give it a try. I guess I'll go around the horn as I see it. So Joe, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, to learn a little bit more about AI, our partners, Microsoft, Google, AWS, they all have really great free resources. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more. MIT has free courses, but at the introductory level, depending on where you're at, there's this free prompting courses that you can go through from each of those, and we can attach those and send those out to the team. From a self-experimental standpoint, there's tools like LM Studio that you can download on your PC, and you go to Hugging Face and download AI models to run locally on your own PC without any internet to kind of get a feel for what a local AI looks like. And I would just, for a footnote, I would recommend a 7 billion parameter model, nothing bigger than that for local processing. And that may not mean anything to anybody, but you'll understand as you get deeper into it. There's just a couple areas where you can go to start getting your feet wet.
Greg, how about resources around application modernization, understanding, and what you're out there trying to help customers with?
So I think a little different here, Scott, than what we typically do is some intellectual property we have, which is called our SAMA service. That's available at cdw.com/SAMA to learn more. Basically, we use that as a way to help clients understand their mainframe a little better in terms of the applications running on there. Really great place to get started with us if you want to understand a lot faster. There's a lot of other, videos all over the internet you can look at for modernization in general, but the tip of the spear in terms of application modernization is starting with the correct rationalization process and hopefully using AI to accelerate that, right? And so I would say start there, and the rest is history. It'll help clients get there a lot faster.
Cool. Roger?
Yeah, so typically when we work with clients, and if we're really focused on an organization and what they want to do with AI, it starts with a leadership and planning alignment training. And that is a one-day workshop, although we found that it works better when you split it into 2 half days, just because there's a lot of information, a lot of exercises. It's very hands-on. You get your hands dirty, developing strategy, developing guiding principles, those policies we talked about. But what we try to do is we try to get very specific about their industry and what they're trying to do with AI. We're not trying to give a general AI training, although we do introduce and get some common terms so that we can understand things. We really want to get very specific about what an organization is trying to do, partner with them, and then go through the things that opportunities that are present and the opportunities that are possibly coming, help them build that strategy, understand their risks and challenges, and go through the measures of success. Because a lot of times you want to make sure that you're capturing the ROI, because it is an investment for AI capabilities, and you want to make sure you're measuring that success. And so that's how we kind of want an organization to get started, is at that level setting and understanding of where they want to go.
All right. So I'll narrow it down to just mainframe, but from a mainframe perspective, and I will try not to show a preference for any software vendors, you can go out to your favorite search engine and do a search on Z Systems AI, Z Systems AI Ops, Z Systems AI Security. And if you want to narrow it down, add the name of your favorite vendor to that search, and you'll find a lot of stuff. The opportunities around adding AI to CICS transactions, IMS transactions, and batch is, I think, a little bit more of a conversation with IBM or whomever is your language vendor, right? I mean, so Broadcom's got a few, Software AG's got a few, and you can also come talk to us, and we can help guide you around infusing AI into your applications as well. All right, so to close it out, I'll give everybody one parting shot. Roger, what's your parting shot?
Well, I guess my parting shot would be, like I said earlier, the AI evolution is just getting started, really. All the predictions are off the charts. And so just being ready to be agile and pivot and adjust and being ready for that next big wave is a key part. There's so many examples of businesses that weren't ready for tectonic shifts. We bring up Blockbuster as a great example of them just not seeing the Netflix technology come when they were the king of the mountain and everybody was going to their stores every weekend, standing in line to get movies. And now they're collecting dust or being plowed over and rebuilt into other things. I think there's one left, somebody said in Washington somewhere maybe. But that's the kind of thing we just want to make sure that people are aware of and are watching out for out there.
Greg, fire away.
I would just probably say one thing, which is I think in a world in IT where we live specifically, is we all try to solve problems, right? And I think the reality that I recently found is it's the ability to ask the right questions to solve the right problems. And so I think using that as a precipice for getting started with AI, and you'll find out more, a lot of the clients will find out more when they start using AI more efficiently with the LLMs and things like that. But your ability to ask the right question will really help you solve the better problem than just a problem. So hopefully that helps.
Great. All right, Joe.
Yeah, if you click on slide 17 real quick, I'll just kind of add on to what everyone else said, because I think they did a great job. But I would say making sure that you're focusing on your strategy and the difference between a strategy and a tactic. And think about whatever you're acting on. Is it a strategy? Is it a tactic? And making sure that you have a vision and a strategy for where you want to go and the current problems in front of you, and have a moat around your business and protect your business from external threats. And I'm not going to read this whole slide to you. And I'll just leave everyone with 2 email addresses in addition to resources that they want to reach out to moat@cdw.com. That'll get to the Moat team. And I believe it's sama@cdw.com for application modernization. So those are 2 email addresses that if they have any further questions or want to dive deeper into any of these topics, the team's here for them.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so my final parting shot is thank you for coming to the webinar. I hope it was enjoyable, and if it wasn't, I hope you suffered through it okay. The resources that we have, including these slides, will be added or are added to the resources tab on the webinar. So thank you, and have a good whatever rest of your day that you might have given when you watch this webinar. Thank you.